Pattaya is a city that pulses with its own energy. Located on the shores of the Gulf of Thailand, it is known for its beaches, vibrant nightlife, and tourism that blends the conventional with the exotic. But there is a specific part of the city that carries a silent reputation, little discussed in travel guides, but widely known among those who roam its streets after sunset: Beach Road. During the day, this coastal avenue seems tranquil. It is common to see families walking, street vendors offering fruits or souvenirs, tourists taking photos with the sea in the background. However, as the afternoon progresses and the sky begins to change color, the atmosphere also transforms. Women start to appear gradually, alone, in pairs, walking slowly or sitting on small benches. Most carry a discreet bag and attentively observe the movement of passers-by. These women do not belong to bars, massage parlors, or nightclubs. They are freelancers. They work independently, with no fixed ties to any establishment. They are there by choice, necessity, or a mix of both. Some arrive at dusk and stay until late at night. Others come for just a few hours. There are no uniforms, no advertisement, just presence, demeanor, and strategy. This video goes beyond the tourist surface to explore a little spoken reality: the presence of freelancers on Beach Road. Who are they? How does this dynamic work? What is the impact on the city, on tourists, and on themselves? With respect, depth, and without judgment, we will walk along this avenue that, at night, reveals much more than a simple seaside tourist spot. Beach Road is not just a seaside avenue. It is, in fact, one of the most emblematic spaces in Pattaya, with a duality that reflects the spirit of the city well. During the day, it presents itself as a typical tropical postcard: blue sea on the right, hotels and shopping centers on the left, palm trees lined along the sidewalk, and a bike path that follows the coastline. But as soon as the sun begins to set, everything changes. The transformation is subtle, yet evident. The scenery remains, but the ambiance shifts. The energy that dominates the place at night is different. Beach Road stretches for about 3 kilometers, going from the northern region of Pattaya to the famous walking street at the southern tip of the city. Along this route, there are hotels of all standards, international restaurants, shopping malls, markets, and various meeting points. However, it is on the seaside, on the sidewalk closest to the sand, that the true stage is set every night. It is there that the parallel life of the city happens, away from the windows and traditional spotlights. Historically, Pattaya began to develop as a tourist destination in the 1960s, with the arrival of American soldiers during the Vietnam War. They sought rest, fun, and a break from the tension of the battlefield. They found a simple village with quiet beaches and a welcoming population. In no time, the city transformed. Infrastructure, hotels, and businesses began to arise, and along with them, the adult entertainment sector also grew. Over the decades, Walking Street gained prominence as the center of nightlife, concentrating bars, nightclubs, and showhouses. But Beach Road, with its discreet appearance and open access, became the ideal territory for another type of work, that of freelancers. They are not linked to commercial establishments and prefer public space precisely because of the freedom it offers. There are no fixed hours or commissions to split. Each woman sets her own rules, prices, and approaches, and Beach Road, with its constant flow of tourists, provides the perfect environment for that. Over the years, the presence of freelancers on Beach Road has become a kind of public secret. Everyone knows, but few speak. The dynamic is silent and organic. Every night, new women appear. Some are locals, others come from inland cities or neighboring countries. They blend into the natural movement of the city. Tourists strolling, families dining, couples walking. There is no explicit signage. What defines the encounter is the gaze, the amount of time spent in certain spots, the body language. Beach Road also benefits from being an area of free circulation. It does not require an entrance fee, has no closing time, and is not controlled by security. This makes the space more democratic, but also more informal. For this reason, many freelancers prefer the avenue to other spots in the city. There, they have freedom of movement and can choose who they want to talk to, negotiate with, or simply ignore. This peculiar configuration has transformed Beach Road into a hybrid zone, neither entirely touristy nor exclusively commercial. It is a transitional territory where the boundaries between leisure, consumption, pleasure, and survival constantly intersect. And for those who observe closely, what is seen is not just a sidewalk by the sea, but a true portrait of the social, economic, and cultural contradictions of Pattaya. Understanding this space is essential to comprehend why it remains so active, even in the face of changes in tourism, legal pressures, and critical gazes. And for that, it is necessary to dive even deeper and get to know the true protagonists of this story. To understand how Beach Road functions at night, it is fundamental to know who the women working there as freelancers are. Unlike professionals working in bars, massage parlors, or nightclubs, freelancers are not tied to any fixed commercial structure. They operate independently, managing their schedule, approach strategies, and prices. But, contrary to what many imagine, these women form a quite diverse group, with complex life stories and motivations that go far beyond the superficial stereotype. Most of the freelancers who frequent Beach Road come from rural Thailand, mainly from poorer regions like Isan in the northeast of the country. Some were born in villages where opportunities are limited, and, from an early age, understood that the big city represented a chance to change their lives. Others came from neighboring countries like Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar, in search of an income they could not achieve in their homelands. Internal and international migration is part of the constant flow that feeds this market. The level of education varies widely. There are women who barely completed elementary school, and others who attended college, but could not find formal opportunities in their fields. Some have children, while others support elderly parents. Many send money regularly to their families and live in small rented rooms in the less touristy areas of Pattaya. Working on Beach Road, for many of them, is a survival strategy, not necessarily a choice made with enthusiasm, but rather with pragmatism. At the same time, there are those who see the work as a form of freedom. Working as a freelancer allows for more control over one's own routine and avoids the restrictions and fees charged by intermediaries. Unlike bars, where professionals have to pay commissions to the manager, constantly consume drinks, and follow strict rules, freelancers decide when to work, whom to talk to, and what price to charge. This autonomy is valued, even in the face of the risks and instability of the street. Physically, there is a wide variety of profiles. Not all conform to the international beauty standard commonly promoted in tourist advertisement. Many are ordinary women with distinct features and styles who invest in provocative clothing, striking makeup, and a confident demeanor. The way they present themselves is part of the strategy. They know that, in the midst of the crowd, small details make a difference. A direct gaze, a calculated pose, a slight smile. It's not just appearance, it's silent language. The routine usually begins in the late afternoon. Some arrive around 5 p.m., while others come later, depending on the activity. They choose strategic spots on the sidewalk, near trees, on benches, in front of shopping malls or hotels. They avoid standing too close to one another, although there is an almost cordial coexistence among them. There is a tacit division of space and mutual respect, even though occasional competition is inevitable. When a potential client approaches, the approach is subtle. A discreet wave, a hello, an invitation to chat. Nothing invasive, but enough to catch attention. The time each freelancer spends on the street varies. Some stay for just a few hours, especially if they can arrange a quick meeting. Others remain until late at night, or even until dawn. On busier days, such as holidays, weekends, or during peak tourist season, the number of freelancers increases considerably. The movement adapts to demand, and many develop a keen sense of reading the environment to know where there are more chances of success. There are also those who work with regular contacts. They use Beach Road as a visibility point, but maintain active conversations through messaging apps and social media. Some clients are repeat visitors, tourists who return annually looking for the same women. These relationships, as commercial as they may be, often involve mutual trust, kindness, and even a certain degree of emotional involvement, even if temporary. Although the term freelancer suggests informality, the work of these women follows a pattern that, over time, reveals itself to be almost professional. They develop strategies, study tourist behavior, adapt to changes in the flow of people, and, above all, learn to handle different types of approaches, from polite to intrusive. Understanding the profile of these women is essential to demystify the idea that they are there out of naivety or lack of alternative. Most know exactly where they are, what they are doing, and what risks are involved. Beach Road is indeed a space of vulnerability, but also of strategy, resilience, and autonomy. And to fully understand this dynamic, one must see how this relationship between freelancers and tourists unfolds in practice, from the first contact to the conclusion of an agreement. Beach Road at night is a space of constant movement. Cars pass slowly. Tourists walk in small groups. Street vendors offer sliced fruits or grilled skewers, and the distant sound of walking street fills the air with an undefined soundtrack. In the midst of all this, freelancers position themselves, carefully observing the movement. They do not attract attention aggressively. The performance is silent, based on subtle signal, time spent, and behavior reading. The dynamic begins with the gaze. This is how most contacts are initiated. When a freelancer spots someone who could be a potential client, she holds the gaze for a few seconds. If there is a response, a smile back, a longer gaze, or a change in the direction of their step, it is enough for her to calmly approach and initiate a brief conversation. Often, a simple, "Hello, where are you from?" is enough to break the ice. The approach is direct, but never invasive. If the interest is mutual, the negotiation happens right there, standing on the sidewalk. There is no open discussion about sex or specific services in public, but there is a kind of informal code. Questions like, "How much for short time?" or "Do you have room?" are common. The term short time refers to quick meeting, usually lasting 1 to 2 hours. The term long time implies spending the entire night together. The values vary greatly depending on the woman's appearance, the tourist's profile, the demand of the day, and the urgency of both parties. Some freelancers have access to their own or rented rooms. Others prefer that the client provide the location, whether a hotel, apartment, or even a short-time hotel, which is quite common in Pattaya, with rooms available for just a few hours. These discreet and functional establishments are part of the invisible machinery that supports the practice. There are receptionists who do not ask questions, private entrances, and upfront cash payments. However, not every interaction ends with an agreement. Many conversations end without anything happening. Sometimes the client is just curious or looking for something very specific. Other times, the freelancer feels that the person does not inspire trust. This filter is important. Even while operating informally, women know they must be alert to signs of risk: agitated tourists, aggressive behavior, suspicious promises. Some have gone through difficult situations and have developed a keen self-preservation instinct. Scams are also part of the landscape. One of the most common is theft during the encounter. While the client is in the shower or asleep, the woman takes money, cell phones, or valuables and disappears. There are also cases where the client refuses to pay after the service or tries to negotiate lower amounts under pressure. For this reason, many freelancers only accept payment in advance, even if it deters some interested parties. On the tourist side, the risk also exists. There are cases of blackmail, threats, or extortion. Some clients get more involved than they should, creating emotional ties that are not reciprocated, and in some cases, end up covering expenses, sending money, and maintaining virtual relationships that are often one-sided. The line between affection and interest is thin here. Another relevant element is the presence of intermediaries. Although freelancers operate independently, at certain moments, they rely on peripheral figures: motorcycle taxi drivers who take them to hotels for a small commission, bar waiters who make recommendations, or even scouts who observe the movement and inform about the presence of police or problematic clients. This informal network creates a layer of security and also fuels a parallel economy. Beach Road also has unwritten rules. Experienced freelancers avoid the busiest spots on Walking Street to avoid attracting unwanted attention. There is a tacit agreement for coexistence that prevents direct confrontations. When a new woman appears and tries to approach clients of others, she is usually discreetly alerted to change areas. This silent organization avoids conflicts and ensures a certain harmony among the workers. With the advancement of technology, many freelancers have started to combine physical approaches with a digital presence. They use apps like Line, WhatsApp, or even social networks to keep in touch with old clients and attract new ones. Some have set up discreet profiles where they display photos, inform availability, and negotiate in advance. This reduces time on the street and increases safety. Others still prefer in-person contact, where they feel they have more control over the situation. It is interesting to observe that, despite all the informality, the logic behind operating on Beach Road follows patterns of any commercial activity: market reading, competition, supply and demand, customer relationships, and constant adaptation. Many of these women act like true freelancers, understanding their business with realism and, at times, strategy. For the tourist, the experience can be seen as an adventure, a fleeting moment, a cultural curiosity. For the freelancer, it is about survival, autonomy, and in some cases, opportunity. But beyond the direct relationship between client and professional, there is a larger mechanism at work, a parallel economy that feeds businesses and supports an invisible part of the city. And it is exactly about this that we will talk next. When discussing sexual tourism in Pattaya, it is common to think only of the direct act between two people, client and professional. But what happens on Beach Road goes far beyond this point of contact. There is a silent yet powerful economic machinery operating behind the scenes. The presence of freelancers daily moves a chain of services, products, and people who often do not even realize that they are integrated into this dynamic. The estimate of how much money circulates on Beach Road is difficult to pinpoint accurately, precisely because of the informality of the activity. However, local experts and scholars claim that, even with average values considered low, between 1,000 and 2,000 bahts for short time, the daily total, multiplied by hundreds of freelancers operating simultaneously, generates a significant flow. And this money does not remain solely in the hands of those providing the service directly. It spreads out, creating an economic domino effect throughout the city. Freelancers, like any workers, consume. They need to eat, dress, live, travel, and take care of their appearance. Many get their hair and nails done weekly at small local beauty salons. They buy clothes, accessories, and makeup in city shops. They frequent night markets, food stalls, and even more popular shopping centers. In other words, they constantly inject money into both the informal and formal economy of Pattaya. In addition, there are services that orbit around the practice itself. Hotels that offer rooms for short time are a fundamental part of this system. Many of them would not have sufficient occupancy if it weren't for this specific demand. Discreet establishments with independent entrances and attendants who don't ask questions have specialized in receiving couples for short periods, becoming essential components of the machinery that supports this market. Motorcycle taxi drivers also benefit from this. They are often the ones transporting people between Beach Road and the hotels, charging fixed rates, or even earning commissions from some freelancers. There are also small street vendors offering drinks, snacks, and cigarettes to those out and about. On busy nights, their sales increase significantly. The bars and restaurants in the area are also impacted. Many tourists take the opportunity to have a drink before looking for companionship. Others use the establishments as meeting points, creating an environment conducive to initial contact. Even laundries and room cleaning services profit from the increased turnover generated by this activity. However, this money circulates without being subject to direct taxation, placing the entire structure in the category of the informal economy. Freelancers, not being formally registered, do not pay taxes on their income. Similarly, associated services, such as hourly rental hotels or intermediaries, often operate outside of regulation. This creates a contradiction. While the practice generates money, it remains invisible in official statistics. Another important point is that this economy benefits people who would hardly be employed in more traditional sectors. Women with low education, immigrants, and individuals outside the formal market find in Beach Road a way to generate income and circulate within the city's economic system. This social aspect is central to understanding why the practice persists, even in the face of legal pressures and moral criticism. Thus, what seems to be just an informal encounter between two individuals actually activates an economic chain with multiple layers. Beach Road does not operate in isolation. It is the center of a living, dynamic, and adaptable network that responds to changes in tourism, economic fluctuations, and the consumption behaviors of those who pass through. But this machinery only works because there is constant demand. To understand this side of the equation, we need to take a closer look at the customers who frequent this scene, who they are, what they seek, and how they behave. The constant presence of freelancers on Beach Road is only possible because there is an equally constant demand. And this demand comes from tourists, mostly foreign men, who see Pattaya as an opportunity to experience something outside the conventional itinerary. But who are these people? What are they really looking for when they approach a freelancer on the sidewalk by the sea? The answer, like almost everything in this universe, is more complex than it seems. There is no single customer profile. The diversity is surprising. There are young men traveling alone for the first time, excited about the freedom offered by Thailand. There are also European retirees, many of whom have lived in Pattaya for years, looking for regular companionship and avoiding deeper connections. Some are short-term tourists, while others are frequent visitors who know the local scene well. There are even couples, yes, couples, who seek three-way experiences or simply observe the environment out of curiosity. A significant portion of these customers arrives at Beach Road without a clear intention. They stroll, observe, and converse. The decision to engage with a freelancer may arise on the spot, as an impulse. Others come already determined, informed by videos, forums, or friends' accounts. They know the codes, understand how to negotiate, and even have references for freelancers they have previously engaged with. Motivations also vary. For some, it's purely a physical matter, easy, quick sex, without complication. For others, it's an attempt to fill some type of emotional void, finding someone to talk to, have dinner with, or hold hands. There are men who pay not for the act itself, but for the momentary feeling of connection, attention, and closeness. This desire for affection, however brief, is something many freelancers know how to recognize and respond to naturally. Customer behavior, however, is not always balanced. There are polite individuals who understand they are hiring a service and respect the professional's limits, but there are also arrogant ones who confuse payment with ownership and act disrespectfully. Unfortunately, cases of verbal abuse or attempts to impose unagreed-upon practices are not rare. For this reason, many freelancers develop a firm stance from the beginning, making clear what they accept and what they do not tolerate. A curious phenomenon is the idealization of Thai women by some tourists. Some arrive in Thailand believing that all women are submissive, docile, or interested in relationships with foreigners. This distorted view, fueled by fetishes and misinformation, generates frustration and conflict. Many freelancers have to deal with unrealistic expectations, such as the client's desire to save the woman from the street when she is actually there by her own choice and is not seeking that type of involvement. There are also cases where the relationship advances beyond a single meeting. Some clients fall in love, maintain long-distance contact, send money, help with rent, children's schooling, or medical expenses. Although there are sincere and lasting stories, often the involvement is one-sided. Experienced in this type of dynamic, freelancers know how to balance the emotional game and, when possible, turn these ties into a form of ongoing support, without necessarily reciprocating the expected emotional involvement. It's worth noting that not every client is prepared to handle the emotional reality that such encounters can provoke. The experience may seem simple, but it touches on deep human issues: neediness, power, vulnerability, desire. In an environment where everything seems easy and accessible, it is common for the boundaries between the commercial and the emotional to blur. In this sense, Beach Road functions as a mirror. Each customer projects something of themselves onto it. Some seek only fun, others seek recognition. Some want to forget who they are outside of this place for a few hours. And there are those who, even without admitting it, want to be seen, touched, understood, even if only temporarily, for a fee and under certain conditions. This meeting of such different worlds, foreign men and Thai women, solitary tourists and freelance strategists, reveals much about modern dynamics of affection, desire, and consumption. At the same time that it moves the economy, it also exposes emotional vulnerabilities on both sides. However, all this movement takes place in a delicate territory where legality does not always align with reality. This leads us to a fundamental question. What does Thai law say about this practice? What is permitted? What is ignored? and what is simply tolerated by the authorities. The legality surrounding the activities of freelancers on Beach Road is, at the very least, ambiguous. Officially, prostitution in Thailand is illegal. The Prevention and Suppression of Prostitution Act, enacted in 1996, prohibits any sexual act in exchange for payment, with penalties ranging from fines to imprisonment. However, as any visitor walking along Pattaya's beachfront at dusk can see, the enforcement of this law is quite selective. In practice, what is observed is a silent tolerance, a tacit coexistence between the forbidden and the permitted. On Beach Road, what occurs is a type of unofficial pact. Freelancers operate in plain view of everyone, and the authorities rarely interfere, as long as certain limits are not crossed. Direct approaches in public are avoided. Conversations occur discreetly, without scandalous gestures or loud discussions. When there is any police activity, it usually involves targeted actions aimed at clearing the area during moments of political or tourist pressure, such as official visits or international events. These operations, however, are temporary. A few days later, the routine returns to normal. In most cases, enforcement is more interested in maintaining public order than in eradicating the practice. As long as there are no complaints, violence, trafficking, or involvement of minors, the presence of freelancers is largely tolerated. This is partly due to the tacit recognition that this activity stimulates the local economy and benefits sectors that would otherwise be marginalized. Another element supporting this tolerance is corruption. Although not openly discussed, many establishments and informal night workers pay regular bribes to keep their activities running without interruption. It is an informal system of license to operate, where everyone knows the rules of the game, even if they are not written down. Furthermore, local authorities make an effort to keep Pattaya's tourist image under control. They prefer to turn a blind eye to the informal practice on Beach Road, rather than face criticism regarding safety, instability, or arbitrary repression. This creates a legal gray area, where the activity is not legalized, but also not actively combated. This scenario of tolerance allows Beach Road to continue operating night after night, but it also places freelancers in a vulnerable situation. Without legal recognition, without labor protection, without formal rights, they exist within a system that uses them but does not protect them. And amid this ambiguous reality, Thai society constructs its own way of seeing and dealing with these women. The way Thai society deals with the presence of freelancers on Beach Road is marked by a duality that permeates many aspects of life in the country. The contrast between appearance and reality. Publicly, Thailand presents itself as a nation of Buddhist value, with strong respect for tradition, family, and social order. However, there is a silent flexibility regarding practices that, while not officially accepted, are tolerated as long as they do not openly challenge established moral code. In the case of freelancers, Thai society seems to apply the philosophy of don't ask, don't tell. In many social circles, especially outside urban centers, this type of work is regarded as shameful. Women who work in this field, when identified, face severe judgment, not so much for what they do, but for making it public. Maintaining appearances is essential. Daughters who send money to support their parents are celebrated, as long as no one asks where that money comes from. At the same time, there is a pragmatism present in the collective mindset. Many Thais recognize that the adult entertainment industry, including the work of freelancers, is an essential cog in the economy of cities like Pattaya. It creates jobs, attracts tourists, and drives business. Therefore, even if it is not morally approved, it is widely tolerated. People prefer not to discuss the topic openly, but they also do not propose structural changes that challenge this model. Religion also influences this stance. Theravada Buddhism, predominant in Thailand, emphasizes karma, detachment, and compassion. Although premarital sex and prostitution are considered acts that generate negative karma, there is a widespread belief that good deeds in other areas of life, such as caring for family, donating to temples, or practicing generosity, can balance this spiritual account. This allows for an ambiguous coexistence between faith and reality, where judgment is softened by a cyclical view of life and destiny. Many freelancers even maintain active religious practices. They visit temples, make offerings, and seriously follow Buddhist ritual. This may seem contradictory in Western eyes, but for them, there is no inconsistency. It is a form of balance between what they do to live and what they believe spiritually. In practice, this coexistence between acceptance and silence creates a kind of social comfort zone. As long as the freelancer's activities remain discreet, without scandals or excesses, Thai society tends to ignore them. It is a way to maintain the functioning of the system without confronting its own moral paradoxes. However, there are still many misconceptions and judgments surrounding this universe. Myths that spread quickly, distorted truths, and secrets that no one shares. And it is precisely these points that deserve to be uncovered next. Beach Road carries a reputation built both by real experiences and by myths that easily spread among tourists, in travel forums, and on social media. Part of the fascination about the place comes precisely from the lack of knowledge. What is suggested but rarely explained clearly. And this information void ends up being filled with exaggerated assumptions, stereotypes, and distorted story. One of the most common myths is that all the women who work there are victims. Although there are indeed cases of exploitation, most freelancers on Beach Road operate autonomously and consciously. They know where they are, understand the risks, and, within the possibilities they have, make strategic choices. Many support family, pay for their children's education, or invest in small businesses. This does not mean that life is easy, but rather that they are not passive figures trapped in an oppressive system, as many believe. Another recurring misconception is the idea that everything on Beach Road is synonymous with danger. There are risks, of course, as in any nighttime urban context, especially involving informal relationships, but the vast majority of interactions are based on mutual respect, clear negotiation, and consent. Problematic situations exist, but they are far from being the rule. It is also important to debunk the view that Beach Road is a chaotic and uncontrolled environment. Despite operating informally, there are social codes, respect among freelancers, and a functioning logic based on coexistence and strategy. More experienced professionals help newcomers respect each other's spaces and avoid behaviors that could attract negative attention from authorities. Finally, many tourists believe that what happens on Beach Road represents the entirety of Thai culture, which is an extremely limited view. Thailand is a vast country with deep traditions, strong spirituality, and a complex society. Beach Road is just a fraction of that reality, visible, intense, but far from defining the whole. Now that the main myths have been dismantled, it is time to understand how a visitor can explore this environment with respect, safety, and awareness. For those visiting Pattaya for the first time, Beach Road may spark curiosity and even a certain fascination. However, before any approach or interaction, it is essential to understand that this space, although open and informal, carries its own social codes. Knowing how to behave can make the difference between a smooth experience and an unnecessary problem. The first point is simple: respect. Freelancers are informal workers, not characters in a show. The approach should be polite, without offensive jokes or invasive behaviors. Many tourists make the mistake of treating these women as tourist attractions, taking photos without permission, or making disrespectful comments. This, in addition to being offensive, can generate negative reactions and even embarrassing situations. If interested in interaction, the conversation should start casually and discreetly. Avoid direct questions about services in public. Freelancers have their own methods for communicating what they offer, and negotiation should only occur when there is a clear sign of mutual interest. Never touch anyone without consent. And remember, refusal should be respected immediately, without insistence. Scams exist, as in any tourist area. Avoid flaunting jewelry, expensive watches, or large amounts of cash. If you decide to go out with someone, prefer well-known places, such as reputable hotels. Never take a stranger to your own room without minimum precautions, such as storing valuables in safes. Payment is generally made in advance and should be clearly agreed upon to avoid misunderstanding. Another important point: do not mix excessive alcohol with decisions that require judgment. Many problems occur when tourists are drunk, lose their discernment, and put themselves in risky situations. Keep common sense active. Finally, it is crucial to remember that cultural respect goes beyond courtesy. It involves empathy, observation, and above all, responsibility. Pattaya is not a theme park. It is a city with its contradictions, where real lives unfold every night. By following these guidelines, it is possible to experience beach roads safely, avoiding hasty judgments and enjoying the experience as a window into a more complex human universe than it appears. At the end of this journey along Beach Road, it becomes difficult to ignore the complexity of what has been seen. The avenue, with its sea on the right and the constant flow of tourists on the left, is much more than an exotic backdrop for those arriving in search of adventure. It is, in fact, a mirror, and what is reflected there depends greatly on who is looking. For some, Beach Road is a symbol of moral degradation. For others, it is a space of freedom, where desires and needs meet without filters. Some see exploitation there, while others perceive survival. Neither of these interpretations is completely wrong, but none is complete on its own, because what happens there is the direct result of social, economic, and emotional context that intertwine delicately. The presence of Freelancer, the movement of tourists, the tolerance of authorities, the silence of society, all of this forms a system that persists precisely because it works, albeit imperfectly. And within it, each person carries their reasons, limits, and choices. Judging from the outside is easy. The hard part is looking with empathy, understanding that behind every approach on the sidewalk, there are stories of mothers supporting children, men seeking affection, young people trying to find their way. Beach Road, with all its physical simplicity, is a stage for human dramas that repeat every night. Discreet, intense, and real. This reality does not need to be glorified or hidden. It simply needs to be faced with honesty. Because in the end, what happens there says as much about the modern world as any other social phenomenon. It speaks of loneliness, desire, power, and choice. It speaks about us. If you've made it this far, perhaps Beach Road will never seem the same again. And maybe this is the first step to seeing beyond the obvious. If you watched this video to the end, you've already noticed that Beach Road is not just a tourist spot or a space of nighttime curiosity. It is a place where various realities coexist, some discreet, others explicit, and that carries, night after night, the marks of a city model shaped by the meeting of the tourist's desire and the needs of those who live here. In this dive, we sought to show, without sensationalism, without judgment, and with the utmost respect, a side of Pattaya that few have the courage to address in depth. And if this story has provoked some reflection, discomfort, or even a change of perspective in you, then we have fulfilled our role. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Have you been to Beach Road? How do you see this reality? Leave your comment below. Your opinion is important and helps enrich this debate. If you're not subscribed yet, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and leave a like. There's much more content about tourism, culture, behavior, and the behind the scenes of what doesn't appear in traditional guides. We'll see you in the next video. And until then, keep looking beyond the surface.